There's a music video slash song going around on the Japanese internet right now called O返事まだカナ, Ojisan構文. Because of the song, I've seen a lot of discourse on the English internet wondering what Ojisan構文is, so I thought I should explain, because I'm very well situated to explain this because I published peer-reviewed research on this topic years ago, back when this was known by a completely different title, which is Ojisan gokko, or pretending to be Ojisan. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised that this song came out in this year, because as far as I was aware, this whole thing, this whole phenomenon, was kind of on the downturn, but it's not like it disappeared, and hey, things can rise from the dead. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to what all this is. Basically, Ojisan Koubun is the current name for what is best understood as a Japanese manifestation of a more global phenomenon, wherein people are paying very close attention to the different ways that people write, and praising, or in these contexts, critiquing and making fun of, the ways that other social groups communicate with each other on the internet. This has happened, of course, since the beginning of the internet, but a more recent English language version of this is, for instance, people that write online like they're boomers in Facebook groups, etc. That is, young people mocking the texting habits of old people by imitating and exaggerating the differences between how these two social groups communicate online. With Ojisan Koubun, or Ojisan Gokko, or whatever you call it, being a Japanese version wherein Japanese people look at, exaggerate, and mock the texting habits, the online messaging habits of older generations. Specifically, of course, older men. As the Ojisan is generally seen to be a very uncool kind of social identity in Japan. Yes, it can just mean an older man or even an uncle, but as books like this humorous field guide to Ojisan note, many of the identities are, looked down on. Indeed, in my research I even found an article that was framed as describing the Ojisan that even Ojisan don't like. But let's start at the beginning. It's obviously unclear who the first person to kind of parody old man texting was, but a big flashpoint for this entire thing is actually almost 10 years ago now. Because for many people online, the first time that they had ever encountered the idea of writing in an old man style happened on April 1st of 2017 when the illustrator Suremi posted the image you're looking at now. And this was a guide to what they called a course to completely becoming an Ojisan. I should note that this tweet does not use any of the terminology that was currently used. Indeed, they just call it old man sentences, or Ojisan no bunsho. But they do flag a number of features that would become key markers of the practice of making fun of old man text. These include using things like chan, requests for dates, statements about how your day was that are very boring, what Suremi calls exquisitely uncomfortable compliments, in a great turn of phrase, and non-standard or excessive uses of things like emoji, cow-emoji, etc. Now, importantly, Suremi is not coming up with this on their own. They're obviously responding to something that they've seen and expanding it in kind of a guide to an audience who was obviously very appreciative of the guide. They not only found it funny, they could see some sort of reality in it. Potentially based on unfortunate reactions they'd had with lecherous old men in their spare time. And the influence of this post is very, very clear, as within 2 months, major companies like Sega and Tanita were jumping on this style of writing and using it in their tweets. Indeed, by August of 2017, one survey at least found that over 25% of the girls they surveyed in a Japanese high school were familiar with this practice. It's unclear who came up with the first label for this of Ojisan Gokko, but the earliest I could find were tweets from early May of 2017. That said, these tweets are not proposing a name for their term, they're just using it, so it came up somewhere, probably just online amongst a bunch of people, without any real centralized source, would be my guess. Now then, while Suremi's guide is obviously very influential, the actual practice of pretending to be an old man and texting your friends is something that is done with your friends. And as a result, there is no Bible to it. There's a lot of flexibility to it. So to understand this practice in my research paper, what I did is I went on Twitter, back when its search function was competent, and it was still a useful website for anything besides spreading misinformation. I'm not upset. And I basically spent a year using various hashtags to find people posting images of their Ojisan Gokko with their friends online. They took screenshots and put them online. I have a huge repository on my computer. Or taking screenshots of tweets where people did Ojisan Gokko with each other online. So this is not actual messages from old men. This is young people, predominantly young women, who were having a lot of fun messaging each other as though they are lecherous old guys. And this was kind of like a game wherein the most common example is two people pretend to be lecherous Ojisan to each other. So it actually reads like two older men sexually harassing each other, kind of, with one of them, I guess, winning sometimes when the other one says, "This is too gross, I gotta bail out." Kimo Sugiru, breaking character by actually laughing. In other cases, people would just message their friends in the old man voice and the friend would respond as themselves, sometimes either going along with it or other times just saying, "Oh, gross, ha ha ha." And then in rare occasions I found people where one person pretended to be the old man and the other person pretended to be like a kyabajo or some kind of sex worker, although those were very rare. That's an important context though that I will come back to in a bit later. So what I did is I coded basically all the words that were used and all the different representations that were used for them and all the emoji, cow emoji, etc. they were used to find out exactly what the norms for this practice were. Basically, when doing acts of Ojisan gokko or Ojisan koubun, whatever you want to call it, there's no mandatory rules, but a few things that are very common are make your messages extremely long. Start with some kind of greeting, talk about your day, especially in a way that like somebody that you're messaging would not be interested in, and slowly ramp things up until you ask a bunch of questions about the person, ending with some kind of comment where you toe the line between explicit sexual harassment and something you can pull back from. The example you're looking at here is great because it starts with this like, oh, it rained today, I hope you're not wet. Wait a minute, maybe your clothes are see-through. And then using the phrase nanchatte, which is like a lame way of laughing, they pull back in a kind of, I bet it would be sexy if your clothes are see-through. Haha, just kidding, unless it's okay. No, it's not. Haha, just kidding. This kind of awkward, unpleasant, just joking, unless kind of vibe, which is made all the more complex by the fact that it is a joke because these are young people messaging each other. That said, you do have to keep things on a borderline. The most explicit post I saw mentioned, for instance, like having an erection, but no one mentioned like explicit sexual activity beyond, say, going to a hotel. Part of the dance that you're doing here is playing around things that you can just kind of pull back from. Just like, a creepy old man would, rather than just kind of explicit, blatant sexual harassment. There's no chintotsu in any of these posts. Beyond just content, though, there are also script-based, emoji-based, and cow emoji-based choices that are very important. I've seen people online say it's kind of just, put some katakana and then you're an old man. It's not that simple. A few things that are important to do is, one, whenever possible, call yourself Ojisan, like that's your pronoun now. And this can be in katakana or hiragana about equally is what I found, but never in kanji. In contrast, you want to use excess kanji, especially for things like greetings and phrases like otsukare-sama or even daijoubu, which show much more variation like normal Japanese than they do in the corpus that I made. In contrast, you want to use katakana for things like not only Ojisan that I mentioned earlier, but also chan, which appeared about a third of the time in katakana, and that aforementioned nanchatte as well appeared about a third of the time in katakana. Sentence final particles and sutagana, or small particles, especially for vowel extension, then also appeared quite a bit in katakana, but hiragana was actually the norm. Sprinkling of katakana is the goal. Everything in katakana is not reflective of the practice. In contrast, though, features like chao, which is a very, very common version of shimao, which is a very, very common ending in the practice, is always in hiragana. Like that did not appear in katakana. So you have to choose your katakana wisely. Likewise, if you want to use a pronoun other than, old man, there's a few options, but boku kanji or katakana ore are the two preferences, and I'm guessing each is a different kind of ojisan. Indeed, there were even like variants I found, like the ojisan who uses a lot of commas, which is associated with an old man who is not only kind of lecherous, but also more needy than the average, giving kind of menhera vibes. So you can customize it. I also contrasted the cow emoji and emoji found in my corpus against wider studies that had looked at the normal use of these features across like average Japanese person texting. And the key finding from that is that anything that has a sweat marker, like this emoji or cow emoji like this one and this one, are way more prominent in these messages than in like normal Japanese writing. Especially again, after you make those kind of like semi-sexual comments that you might want to pull back, like nanchatte and then sweat is a very Ojisan style message. And you also want to make sure you always laugh using kind of old style forms like the laugh kanji in parenthesis. Do not use things like warota or www. Indeed, this is what is used by the practitioners when they break character and start laughing, because these are not associated with older men. But of course they will be in a few decades, when the young people have a new way of laughing online and we are all lame. So these messages are obviously quite complex and take a long time to write. So why do they involve so many features? Like, why isn't it just katakana or just katakanji or something like that? Well, basically what had happened is that katakana was used online by young people as kind of a various practice they had, but especially was emphasized by people that were involved in things like enjo kosai or various forms of sex work, paid dating, etc., as a way of kind of emphasizing a personal style in the digital age. Old lecherous men who associated with young women via these networks noted their style and then tried imitating it, but they did it wrong. And they also mixed in features of their own writing, which they got from being older, such as excessive kanji use or emoji, kamoji, etc., that are kind of old-fashioned. And then, of course, as well, just the entire context of interacting with people in this way. This got noticed by young women, likely first women who are in these kind of industries, but then also just women who unfortunately got hit on by old men who got their phone number. And enough people then became aware of it that it became a whole social practice, resulting in songs, videos, etc. Indeed, this is not like the first song that has ever made fun of men's texting. There's an Otoboke Beaver song from a few years ago, which similarly notes like an old man who is explaining punk to the punk rock band and being irritating, etc. That also mentions the old man waiting for their reaction, just like the song that is popping off right now has the, henji mada kana. Will a message happen? Indeed, some people who engage in the practice for fun, will even send massive messages before their friends can respond, or in some cases even like call them and hang up so that a missed call is part of the reaction to imitate this desperate old man style. Do old men actually text like this? Well, probably. But honestly, most of these messages are again fake. The vast majority of people are probably more familiar with old men's writing from writing parodying old men made by women who are making fun of old men. In the song, it's supposed to be an interaction with an old man who is messaging the singer, but this video wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for a bunch of young people messaging other young people in this style. Indeed, it's so well known now that there are even like games of it. And of course, sometime in all this, the name got changed from Ojisan Gokko to Ojisan Kobun, which is mainly because Kobun, etc. have become like a thing, a type of Japanese net play where you mock the language style of somebody else. I talked about, for instance, Pamosan Kobun in another video. So with the rise of Kobun as an internet thing, Gokko fell away, and this joined a whole collection of styles of internet play. As for to talk about this in English, while Kobun generally means syntax, in formal linguistics we would call this a register, as it's a style of features that is associated with a social persona. That is hard to define, but circulates as something people believe is associated with them, and therefore can become a form of parody. Anyway, that's your crash course in this. If you'd like to know more about this process and what it was, and why people are finding this video funny, here's the research I've written on it. It's not open access, unfortunately, but you can access it through a university account. And I have a much longer, much more in-depth lecture about this that I posted on YouTube years ago, so check it out. I hope this helped you understand what it is. And if you appreciate this video, you can, send me some photos and thanks. Nanchatte. No, please don't do that. Please do not do that. I could get in so much trouble. I do not want those. Please do not do that.